Hi, I'm Pastor Brenda. It is really great to meet you in this space. Really great to meet you. So before I get on to our next message in the series of leading our brains, I want to give you this endorsement about tonight's message. A couple weeks ago, I sent the notes from this message to my son because I had so many notes, so many thoughts, and I just needed someone to look at it and edit it down for me and make it have a through thought. And so he did that for me. And this is what he sent back to me about tonight's message. Now, first, you should probably know where my son is. This is my son, Kenneth, and he is doing some time in prison. So when he talks about his crew, his people, his Bible study, this is all coming from people who are living in prison. This is what he had to say about this message. This one was an instant hit, and I described what their lives are like so well, and that I'm very popular with his friends where he is. And then the best part for me is, and how proud he is to be part of our family. Now, if you know my story with our sons, that's going to make you cry also. If you don't know my story, find it. But this is a pretty special instant hit, and I talk about their lives in prison like I understand what they're going through. All right. So let's see how you do with this message tonight. So back in our series about trust issues, and you can find that on our YouTube channel, we talked about this thing that our brain does, especially when we have trust issues with God, or even with others. There's a gap that happens, and to fill that gap, we either are going to lean towards suspicion or we lean towards trust. So when we make these small deliberate tweaks to our thinking, when we start leading our brains, when we start trusting God more than we trust what our brain is regurgitating, and again, see this whole series on the YouTube channel to understand all of that better, we start then making our decisions based on trust. Now, this is not a guarantee that you will not be hurt by someone as you start trusting more. That person's failure to be honorable to you isn't a definer of who you are. That person's failure is that person's failure. You are not defined by that negative relationship. What you are defined by is your heart of trust. And this heart of trust grows from pride, self-esteem, compassion, and gratitude. These are the little virtues we talked about in the last video. These little virtues grow your heart to trust and to lean more towards trust. Okay, a lot right there. Let's talk about this brain for a moment, this beautiful plastic brain that God has given us. Part of our brain is called the amygdala. This is the part of our brain that is to protect us and keep us alive in this dangerous world and from the stupid things that we do. So, for example, say we're on a hike and a boulder is falling off a cliff and is rolling in our direction. The amygdala is activated to help you and I make a quick decision before the rest of our brain can even think. The amygdala directs the whole body. I mean, all of a sudden, you feel it. The hormones are adrenaline and cortisol released into the blood. Adrenaline causes the air passages in our body to dilate. This allows the body to supply more oxygen than usual to the muscles, so you can do something amazing to save yourself. The amygdala also helps to store memories of events and emotions so that an individual, you and me, may be able to recognize similar events in the future. Now think about this deeper. While the amygdala thinks for us before the rest of our brains can even think, I want you to notice how we can still lead our brains. The amygdala stores memories. It stores trauma. It will remember the path we went hiking on, and our body will automatically be on alert for falling boulders. This is the good part of the amygdala. But the amygdala also stores trauma. So sometimes something traumatic has happened and your amygdala got called in to save you. So say you were like at a confrontation and this confrontation happened in a building, and now whenever you go into that building, that memory stored, and you feel that tension raise in you, and you feel like the amygdala is taking over to protect you for what you're walking into that building because it remembers what happened there last time. But people who experience trauma are able to heal, and we're going to learn about that tonight because we have this beautiful plastic brain. That means we can even heal from this as our amygdala does what it's supposed to do, which is to protect us. So when the amygdala is activated, your body is left in a heightened, tense position. To undo that, you must move your body through this stress cycle, or you'll become stuck, and your brain will keep reacting in this heightened, tense, always leading towards suspicion. Some of you, even just the mentioning of this, you feel that tension in your body, just identifying it. And I want you to pause on that thought for a big moment because I want to introduce something else, and we're going to bring this all together. I'm going to say something crazy true. Confusion is a gift from God. We are afraid of confusion because it feels uncomfortable, or because we don't want to look dumb, or because confusion may just lead to doubt. And often with confusion, we experience some negative emotions, such as shame, frustration, and anger. Which then often, when we experience those negative emotions, we also experience some irrational behavior, like yelling at someone else, mocking someone, or offloading with some really bad humor. Does anybody here want to say, me too? But this is it. But confusion is often the first step to learning something new. Confusion is an opportunity to start believing something useful. Confusion motivates, leads to deep learning, and triggers problem solving. That's true, isn't it? And this all sounds like some leading your brain material. Now also, notice confusion is a whole body response, kind of like how the amygdala reacts to our whole body. Confusion, you feel it in your whole body. Have you ever seen a child learn how to play the piano? Like in those first few piano lessons, she is she's all tense and hunched over, and her face is scrunched, and her hands are just stiff, and they barely move, and it's all the concentration, and she may be kicking her legs and kicking the piano because it's just this whole body feeling because she's confused about learning this piano. But with practice, the child develops piano grace and begins to play and relax while she plays. And eventually, piano playing becomes the relaxer. This is because the child goes from using massive number of neurons to an appropriate few neurons, which are well matched to the task of piano playing. Confusion started with a lot and always ends with a few. You see what I'm saying? Now, confusion, like I said, generally triggers negative emotions. Do you ever, when you're in confusion, do you ever just stop and get curious about those emotions, about the good emotions and about the negative emotions, and try to figure out why you are feeling this way? Or do you just like steamroll right over those emotions? Or do you just white knuckle your life and just gonna get through? Ignoring our emotions is what leads to dehumanizing behavior. You see, out in our culture right now, there is a lot of confusion. And out of that confusion, we're seeing a lot of dehumanizing behavior. Do you see what I mean? One of our core values in this church is we will not dehumanize the other. So we're going to see our confusion as a gift from God to see what new we can learn. Now, the first place we experience our emotions is in our bodies. It is a physiological thing. So this is your first question to go with this message. So I'm gonna tell you the question, you're gonna pause the video and ask this to the group of people you're gathered with. I hope you have your roommates there, your family, your small group. Have this conversation. When you're driving a car and an 18-year-old swerves into your lane, what is happening inside your body? Tell the whole experience. I'll be right here. So when you were having this conversation, could you feel the tension in your body of escaping this incident, the heroics that happened, and you could just feel that tension even talking about this kind of an episode? Something hard was happening, and your amygdala is doing what it can to protect you. The what's next is how we get to lead our brains. In that next moment, can we get curious about those emotions that we are feeling? Again, they're a full body experience. Can we get curious about those emotions? Because your brain, it needs a story to know what happened. When you give the brain a story, your brain then releases chemicals to reward you, to give you a sense of calm, whether the story is true or not. It just needs something to say, you're safe, you're alive, you can continue on in your life. But it doesn't have to be a true story. In the absence of data, your brain then makes up stories. This is where conspiracy theories come from. This is often where fights come from, and those people that we love so much. We have an absence of data, and we don't lean towards trust. We lean towards suspicion. We don't lean towards generous assumptions. We lean toward, how the heck could you? And you go, okay, you know what I'm talking about here? The brain wants a story that minimizes variables, minimizes uncertainties, and gives us a good guy and a bad guy. Now, first, thank God for the amygdala, because we'd all be dead if the amygdala had to take time to think about all of these nuances. So in that rush of emotions, you make up a story out of this confusion. The driver is just stupid. The driver's only 18 years old. The driver wants to kill me. Okay, your brain has made up a story, whether it's true or not, but it's taken you from got to protect you to you are safe to proceed with your life. So can you lead your brain more towards trust than suspicion? What is fear-based and what is real? And let's talk about this when it comes to our view of who God is. We don't know why God allowed whatever bad thing to happen. There is an absence of data to understand why God, why did this happen? So then your mind makes up a story about God. Is it true or is it false? Your brain needed to make it up. But is it a true story about God? Your brain rewards for bad, good, safe, dangerous, for you or against you. It doesn't matter. It just has to move you to safety. The brain requires time to figure out ambiguity and uncertainty. And that sure sounds like those very long moments of when you're in confusion. Those uncomfortable moments of ambiguity and uncertainty. Now there is this psychologist, Dr. Kurt Thompson, who's got a podcast called Narrow Faith. He's written a lot of books tying in the psychology of us with this neuroscience and our faith. He's brilliant. He wrote this in his book, The Soul of Desire. It takes less than 3 seconds for the neuroaffective effects of shame to register in the mind, changing the contours of our felt sensations and perceptions. It takes anywhere from 30 to 90 seconds for us to fully receive the emotional load of a compliment, of a bid for attachment, of a gift of goodness or beauty directed our way. For goodness and beauty to arise, time for dwelling is necessary. That's 3 seconds to register something hurtful. That's 30 to 90 seconds to register something good. Can you lead your brain? Can you breathe and wait the 30 seconds to try to lead your brain into a truthful story? Can you? So this is your next question. I want you guys to ask yourselves. Do you remember a false story you told yourself to protect yourself? And then you finally realized that it was a false story to protect yourself. Can you remember one of those times in your life? This could be a funny story, or this could be one of those aha moments in your life. Share those stories. I'll be right here. Thanks. Thanks for sharing your stories. So let's ponder your life for a moment. These are some questions I'm going to ask you, but they're just for you to think about. What stories have you told yourself to fill in that gap? What stories have you told yourself to excuse the bad behavior in a relationship? Especially those relationships that keep you in confusion. And this last question. What stories have you made up about God to explain the gap in your expectations of God? Are they true stories or are they false stories? By breathing, by not being afraid of the confusion, by being curious about your emotions, allowing time for your brain to nuance what is going on, you can lean towards trust. If you don't, you will lean towards suspicion. This is also one of the big reasons why generosity is one of our core values also here in this church, because this is nuancing your brain towards trust. You can live this small story about how broke you are all the time, and you just love that big generosity project, but you can't give to it because you're so broke, and it's a really small story about yourself. Or you can live into this larger story and trust God with your finances and to be generous as little or as much as you can with wisdom and find yourself telling a better story with your life. And that's going to lead you towards trust and better information and a better story. This is why we practice generosity in this church. So I'm going to get really practical with you here, besides that one point there about generosity. How do you calm your amygdala, whether it is stimulated from something real or something trauma related? So I got some very, very practical things to do here. First thing is you want to speak your body's language. And your body's language is movement, jumping up and down. So you want to complete the stress cycle. I talked about this earlier in the beginning. And one way to do that is to just get movement into your body. So your body's moving. Again, your body understands moving up and down in this kind of movement. So those, and you probably have heard this in health blogs and everywhere you can, those who exercise every day for 20 minutes to 60 minutes do live less stressful lives. This tension buildup, this white knuckling, it really does go down. You can still be white knuckling through life and exercise, but the exercise is so much better for you. So maybe you don't like physical activity. Maybe you don't want to exercise. I've got some other suggestions that are the same way that also speaks your body's language. Social interaction. Casual but friendly social interaction is an external sign that your world is a safe place. The more you greet acquaintances, the more your brain feels like it is safe. So this is kind of opposite what we talked about back in our trust issue series. We talked about loneliness and the science of loneliness. And loneliness lies to your brain. And one of the things it does is it keeps you, in tension, protection. The amygdala is activated, and it keeps you at the edge, like a feeling you're on the edge of a herd and a predator's coming to get you. And so instead of feeling that way, you decided to stay home and not try to go out. So trying to create social interactions is a way you're saying, I am safe. You're telling your brain that you are safe, and that's recording so that you feel safer in life. Another way is laughter. Now, laughter is another thing. You have to have social interaction to have laughter. And then those moments when you have that, just that gut-busting, really good memory type of laughter, you just had a lot of movement in your body. You spoke your body's language. You got to release that stress. Good one. This one is science. John Gottman study, by the way. A 6-second kiss. This is an awkwardly long kiss, but 6 seconds is too long to kiss someone you resent or dislike, and it's far too long to kiss someone with who you feel unsafe with, right? So basically you have to stop and deliberately notice that you are with this person and that you like this person. And again, your brain then knows that you're in safety. If you don't have anybody to kiss for 6 seconds, science again says a 20-second hug does the exact same thing. All right? Count the seconds. Tell your body that you're safe. Another thing to do is a big snotty cry. I mean, you have this big whole body experience cry. Again, you speak in your body's language. And when you get done with it, that problem still may be there. But again, you just spoke your body's language. And if you've ever had one of those cries, you know you did. You just feel this cleansing to your soul. Again, the problem could still be there, but all of a sudden, your perspective is different, right? If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. Then the last idea I have is just creative expression. This is, again, you're entering confusion as you create something, and you're going through the whole thing, and you just created something beautiful. You spoke your body's language again because you did something, some kind of movement, some kind of creation which worked the brain and the confusion and new things, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but you still made something beautiful. That speaks your body's language. And these are all things you guys can do. So I made that crazy statement. Confusion is a gift from God. Confusion is the first step of learning something new. Confusion is an opportunity to start believing something useful. Confusion motivates, leads to deep learning, and triggers problem solving. So my son Kenneth had this also to say that I should add to the message. And this is from him, living in his situation. Confusion is a gift from God! Exclamation point, amen. Most people won't believe this or accept it. This is the truth. It is the truth. I'm going to use this movie as an example about confusion. Well, it's 3 movies. These movies are, at first glance, you may feel aren't even worth the category of your sermon. They are the Shyamalan films, Invincible, Split, and The Horde. These films are a trilogy. Gotta say, I've never watched them, but if you have, you're going to be sinking here with Kenneth. Anyway, a person must go through confusion and survive it to understand that it is a gift and a lesson. It takes time. That's if a person figures this out at all. That's where the trust comes in. This is life on earth where we are not in compliance. It's confusion. It's not smart to lie to yourself. Things are not going to be all right. There's no time for sugarcoating. These truth sermons are what's needed. Thank you. They know we are Christian based, but truth is truth. This is what the Lord said. Truth touches everyone. It convicts, it heals, and it sets free. So interesting that Kenneth circled leading our brains through confusion to trust to truth. All things we've talked about here, all things you can find on our YouTube channel. So interesting that these are all entangled together. So here is the hope for all of you. Leading our brain, and we got previous sermons about this, is making these small, deliberate tweaks. Confusion moves you to using a massive number of neurons to the appropriate few neurons, which are well matched to the task of your life. And it moves you out of that not attention you've been living in. And just picture that student on the piano to someone who can just gracefully play the piano. And do not be surprised to find yourself gracefully living this life of faith. You'll be amazed when you are confused about your faith. You follow those emotions. You try to find the truth of the story and tell your brain that. And all of a sudden, this faith becomes doable and livable. You stop dehumanizing the others, and the world becomes changed. You are leading your brain towards trust, which is then opening you up to this beautiful world. May you lead your brain. May you make those small, deliberate tweaks through the confusion and through the chaos so that you can have your brain lean towards trust. So you can then make generous assumptions and bless this world. Please live like that. Amen. I will see you again.